So it says it's starting up, but I know Facebook. It's probably on its way as we speak. So I want to welcome Kristin Erz from Hurtigruten, and you are going to share this amazing experience you had. You have visited Antarctica, something that is on my to-do list. Anyone that knows me, I don't have a bucket list, I have a to-do list, and I like to scratch things off and move on to the next adventure. So Kristin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's my pleasure to be here. And thank you so much in partnership with Expedia Cruises The Beach. This is my favorite destination to talk about, and even more so now because I, around this time last year, it was end of February last year that I had the opportunity to travel to Antarctica. So I'm going to take the time to intersperse some of my own stories and experiences of when I had the opportunity to travel here, and also give you some insight into what it means and what it's about and how it works when you are actually traveling to a destination like Antarctica, because it's quite different from, you know, the typical cruise experience that you might be used to. But I always love to start off with this beautiful video that I think so perfectly captures the amazing, you know, lighting, the landscapes, the ice, the ship experience that you can enjoy when you're in a beautiful place like Antarctica. I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. Just makes my heart stop. It's just such an incredible place. And I hope that gave you a little bit of a taste of what it can be like to cruise to Antarctica. So of course, why Antarctica? Why would you want to go there? I think when we first think of Antarctica, we think of the penguins, we think of the ice, we think of maybe seeing some whales while we're down there. But there's so much more to the experience, and all of those things really do add to it. It is about getting to an authentic place, a place where very few have traveled in the world. For me, it was my 7th continent, and for most people, it tends to be the last continent that they visit. So I was happy to be able to tick off of my to-do list my 7th continent of Antarctica. It really is about immersing yourself in the destination. Our ships are beautiful. They provide a very comfortable, safe space to be there, but it really is all about the destination. Being there, you know, where so few are, it can just be just you and your ship and your small group of people in this amazing calm and silence, except when the penguins are around, because the penguins are quite loud. But it really kind of catches you in a number of moments of just awe. You just can't believe that you're actually down there. Now, in order to travel to Antarctica by ship and actually step foot on land, it is a small ship experience. And I will show you some of the details of how those are categorized when you're considering doing a trip down to Antarctica. So small ship, small group experience is what it's all about. It's, of course, getting off the beaten path. Antarctica is not inhabited. It never has been. And right now there is a treaty in place that will prevent, hopefully for, the future forever, that it never will be permanently inhabited. It is about education more so over entertainment. We sort of call it edutainment, a little bit of a mix of the two, because we want you to not only go down to Antarctica and enjoy and experience the destination, but also learn something while you're there. Learn about the different types of penguins that we're going to see. Learn about the climate change that is affecting, how different glaciers are receding and how icebergs are breaking up. So we really make sure that you leave the destination as ambassadors for the destination. For us, it's all about the spirit of exploration. We are a Norwegian company, and we have a lot of Norwegian polar heritage. If you look at Roald Amundsen, for example, he was the first to actually make it down to the South Pole. So aptly named is one of our newer ships, the MS Roald Amundsen, to commemorate the wonderful feats and polar exploration that he encountered in his lifetime. But most importantly, when you're considering a destination like Antarctica, you need to go in with an open mind, and you need to know that you're flexible, that your schedule remains flexible. So I'm going to show you a sample itinerary, and this was actually my itinerary. This is what we did when we traveled here. And when we're used to looking at a cruise itinerary, you tend to see, okay, day one, we're in port from this day to this day. Day two, we're in port this day to this day. You can see this itinerary lacks detail. Like if you look at day 6 to 11, all it says is Antarctica. And you're thinking, well, that doesn't leave very much, in terms of, well, what's going to happen? What am I going to see? Where am I going? What are we going to do? And the whole reason behind it is because expedition cruising is taking advantage of the best opportunity that exists when we're there. And a lot of that is determined by Mother Nature, by the sea ice conditions, safety factors, wildlife viewing opportunities. So our schedule, although we have a plan set in place at the beginning of the voyage, we actually don't publish the details of the day's events until the evening prior. So we'll sit down and go through with the expedition team sort of pre-arrival little briefing about what's going to happen the following day. But what can actually sometimes happen is the following day, you wake up and maybe the plan was to go and do a landing at, say, Stonington Island, for example, but maybe conditions aren't safe there. So we actually have to revamp the plan and switch it to plan B or plan C. And it doesn't mean that it's an inferior plan. It just means that we're going to take advantage of the best opportunities we have when we're there. And I remember our plan B day, and it was just this perfect combination of penguins and ice and glaciers, and there was a couple research stations there. And I remember coming back on board after exploring and thinking, how could we possibly have topped that? And that was the plan B day. So I don't ever want you to think that it's about, doing something better or worse. It's just all about taking advantage of the opportunity as it's presented. So as you heard me mention, Antarctica is not inhabited, and this is due to an Antarctic treaty that was signed back in 1959, stating that Antarctica would stay a place of peace and science. And thankfully, that is still the case today, and this is supported by over 50 countries. Now, you'll see this logo here, it says IATO, and that is the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators. And they are actually a regulatory association for this destination. So we, as an operator down in Antarctica, have certain rules to follow to make sure that A, of course, we are protecting Antarctica and leaving behind only our footprints when we visit there. And B, of course, to make sure that we are operating safely, our guests are safe, and of course, the wildlife is safe as well. So it is a mutual agreement between us and the destination. And if anybody breaks any of the rules when they're operating down there, you can be banned from actually sailing in Antarctica. So these are rules that we follow to a T to make sure that everybody has an enjoyable but safe experience. So some of the rules, of course, that you need to follow when you are going down to Antarctica is the size of your ship, the number of passengers that are on board. And there's actually 3 different categories that they fall into. Well, category 3 size ship is a ship that has more than 500 guests. So these ships are not physically allowed to land their guests on the continent of Antarctica. So you do see some of the larger cruise lines offering Antarctica itineraries, and they will be, we call them drive-by cruises. So they will sail through some parts close to the Antarctic Peninsula, as close as they can get with their size, but unfortunately aren't able to physically step foot on land. So if you have it in your heart that you want to go to Antarctica, but you want foot on land to say that you've been to the 7th continent, and you want to be looking at a category 2 and a category 1 size ship. So for us, our 2 newest ships, the MS Roald Amundsen and the MS Fridtjof Nansen, are world's first hybrid electric powered ships. These fit within that category 2 size. So we can actually go to up to 25 different landing sites within the Antarctic Peninsula and the continent. And then a category 1 size ship is fewer than 200 passengers. We have more than 25 landing sites to choose from. And we also get the opportunity to visit South Georgia, which is a sub-Antarctic island, and it is home to the king penguin. So if you have a love and need for penguins, I recommend doing our longer itinerary on the Fram that gets to visit this incredible place. Now, some of the other things we need to follow before we ever do our first landing is following biosecurity. So one of the things that we have to do is we actually take all of the outer clothing layer that we would be wearing when we are out on the continent, and we actually go to a little vacuuming station that we have set up on our ship, and we vacuum out all the little nooks and crannies and pockets and Velcro to make sure there's no foreign objects that could potentially fall off of us and be introduced to the continent. We want to make sure that we're not introducing anything there and that we're not introducing anything from the continent onto our ship. So we go through this vacuuming, because again, you don't know if you'll have maybe, for me, cat fur. It's everywhere because I have a number of cats. But cat fur, it's something where you want to make sure it's not on your clothing. You don't want to introduce it. You want to make sure there's no leaves stuck in your pocket or anything like that. So one of the other things we go through is disinfecting our boots before we get into the landing craft. So we will walk through a disinfectant before we get into our small tender boats that will take us ashore. And then same thing when we actually return from doing a landing, we will walk through what I like to call this little boot car wash, and it scrubs off all of the remnants of what you might have picked up on the bottom of your boots when ashore in Antarctica. And if you are anywhere near penguin colonies during some of the landings, I'm sure you can imagine what kind of stuff you can get stuck on the bottom of your boot tread. Now, we also have to make sure that we maintain a safe distance from wildlife. The rule down in Antarctica is 5 meters or 15 feet. Now, it doesn't always mean that the wildlife follow the rules. So as you can see here, this little fur seal pup decided that our boot brush was a perfect opportunity to take a little afternoon nap. This little Adelie penguin on the right-hand side here might have got a little confused and actually hopped up on one of our explorer boats while some of our guests were on it. Now, can't guarantee that that will ever happen, but this was a case, a lucky case for these guests. And I'm going to show you a little video down below. This will blow up full screen. But I want you to pay attention to this woman here who is in the forefront. And she's got the yellow hood on. And you might not be able to see it now, but you'll see it once I blow it up, that there is a Gen 2 penguin just below her. And this Gen 2 penguin decided that it was going to do everything it possibly could to catch the life jacket strap of this guest. So let me blow up this video for you. It's a quick one, so pay attention. Oops. Sorry, very quick, as you could tell, I was just standing there with my cell phone filming that. But again, the whole idea behind it is we maintain our distance. We make sure that we follow the rules. Yes, sometimes the wildlife does come up to us. They are curious about us. And may interact with us. And the whole point is exactly as this guest is doing. We just let the interaction happen. We don't touch anything. We don't move, to frighten them or anything like that. And this penguin did eventually get bored of that guest and moved on its merry way for the day. So the Antarctic sailing season, it's between sort of the end of October through to the end of March, early April time. And even between those months, there were separate smaller seasons for you to experience different types of, amounts of snow and different types of wildlife activity during these time frames. So at the very beginning of the season, we like to say that this is sort of photographer's dream to go at this time of year because there's lots of fresh ice and snow. So it can make for some beautiful photos. Because as you'll notice, I went at the very end of the Antarctic season, and after a full season of penguins nesting and laying their eggs and having their chicks, they make a mess of everything, and the smell just grows as the season goes on. And whether or not you knew, penguins actually eat a lot of krill. And when the krill comes out, it comes out pink. So imagine that mixed with snow, you actually, by the end of the Antarctic sailing season, start to see a lot of pink snow all around. So at the very beginning of the season, this is the nesting period, the mating period for the penguins. And they start to lay their eggs and build their nests around it. And then if you're lucky enough to be on the itinerary that goes to South Georgia, same thing, the penguins will go through the same process, and the elephant seals as well. Of course, we still stay well away from the elephant seals during mating season. When you get into that mid to late December, early January timeframe, if your hope is to see the fluffy little penguin chicks, this is the time of year that you want to go. And this is when you'll see penguins sort of in their largest groups, in their largest colonies. Our sea ice starts to recede a little bit at this time of year because we are getting the warmer and longer days. And why this is important is because certain landing sites, it can take a certain period of time to get from the ship to the landing site, depending how much ice is in the water. So at the very beginning of the season, it can take longer to get to a landing site compared to as you get towards the end of the sailing season, where your trips can be a little bit shorter because there's less ice flow in the water. And your whale sightings start to increase at this time of year as well. Then when we get to the end of the season, we hope actually that the sea ice has receded enough that we can actually cross below the Antarctic Circle. So for some, the list is I want to go above the Arctic Circle and below the Antarctic Circle. So we can only attempt to do this towards the end of the season so that the ice has receded enough that we can do so. I was lucky enough, we were successful in going below the Antarctic Circle on my voyage. Your peak whale sighting season is now, and your fur seals are the most common at this time of year. And yes, if you're lucky, you may even have an encounter like these guests did with a whale. But I think why this is my favorite time for penguin watching is because this is when the penguins start to molt. So the penguin chicks, as you saw in the photo previous, they're all fluffy and cute and adorable, but they need to lose the fluff to gain their swimming feathers so that, they'll be able to eventually go out into the ocean. So this is a perfect example, these two photos that I was able to capture of penguins molting. I think they couldn't have formed in a better way. This one looks like it's got this nice little afro happening from the way his feathers have started to molt. And this one here on the left almost looks like he's got this beautiful, fur coat on. So these are the types of kind of cute and quirky little things that you can expect from the penguins during your molting season at the end of the year. So why travel to Antarctica with Hurtigruten? Antarctica is a place that you do want to go with an operator that has a lot of experience in polar conditions, polar water. We're lucky enough, we've been doing it for 127 years. We actually started as a company back in 1893. We also operate very sustainably as well. We are a leader in the cruise industry from a sustainability standpoint. So this beautiful ship that you see here in the photo, she was the world's first hybrid electric powered ship. We also added a sister ship to her just last year. We also, with our existing fleet, fuel them with biofuel. And if you can believe it, it's made out of organic waste and dead fish. So we're literally using nature to power our ships. A couple years ago, we were the world's first major travel company to ban all single-use plastics as well. Our goal as a company is to be 100% emission-free in our operations. The technology doesn't exist yet, but these are the types of things that we at Hurtigruten invest in, especially because we sail in such environmentally sensitive regions of the world. We like to call our ships our base camp at sea. Might be a little bit nicer than your base camps if you're transiting or climbing one of the mountains, Mount Fuji or something like that. But we've got a great interactive educational space on board, incredible cuisine, just 5-star meals in my opinion. And we're still very comfortable and casual because we find it a bit quirky to, be dressed all up in formal gear in the middle of this, very massive cold and ice destination. We love the idea of go to dinner, in a comfortable sweater and, jeans and just be comfortable and casual, enjoy a drink by one of our faux fireplaces on board. And because we're Norwegian, our look and feel inside our ships, very Scandinavian, very warm tones, wools, that type of thing. So really it's kind of your nice, cozy, comfy retreat after you've been out for a day in the cold. And we give you the gear that you need for your adventure as well, which I will show you. But how this differs sort of from regular, larger ship cruising is it's all about the expedition team, their expertise. They're the ones that really deliver the experience. So they host lecture series on board. They take care of you when we're doing our landings. As you can see here, this top left photo, I think perfectly captures the dedication of what it means to be an expedition team member in the polar regions. This is our expedition team VP, actually, Karen Strand. And she that day very likely was in that water for about 6 to 8 hours, polar water. But these are the things that they are doing to make sure that our guests are having a safe and enjoyable experience when you're in Antarctica. They are educated in their own specialty. It could be geology, marine biology, ornithology, polar history, photography, all things and topics that tie in very nicely to help you learn about this destination. And of course, they all come highly trained in polar survival. They have to redo their training and their certification, not just for Hurtigruten, but for IATO before they start any season down in Antarctica. So some of the gear that you're going to need when you explore this destination, everybody on board a Hurtigruten expedition gets the Helly Hansen expedition jacket. So this is actually your souvenir as well to take home with you at the end of the voyage. So we size you for this once you get on board the ship. This is a great wind, water resistant layer because the key to dressing for expedition is layers. You want to be able to easily add on, if you're feeling cold, and take off as you become more active. So that's our beautiful jacket. And of course, nice and bright so we can perfectly see you against the snow when you're down there as well. We also provide the loan of our Hurtigruten muck boots. These are wonderfully warm, treaded rubber boots, perfect for ice conditions, standing in polar water, and just really helping you adjust and adapt to the elements. And these are actually regulation boots that need to be used down here. We can't actually allow guests to use their own boots when they're in Antarctica. Again, for that reason of cross-contamination. We don't want any fleece or shoelaces or anything like that potentially being introduced to the continent. We also provide the use of our trekking poles. So if we are going on any hikes, or maybe if the landing site is a little uneven, you have the use of our poles. And then sticking with our no single-use plastics, everybody will also have one of our Hurtigruten reusable water bottles as well. And that's your souvenir to take home with you at the end of the trip. Now, the boats that you see above me, these are actually our version of tender boats, quite different than what you might be used to with the larger cruise experience. So we use these to get our guests to and from the ship and shore. We also use these for opportunities to go out and do some scenic cruising. And I'll show you a little bit about how different landings look depending what the climate and the landscapes are looking at. So the type of experience we have on board for culinary, in the expedition world, we always say expedition is what takes priority over the meal. So you might find even from day to day, the times shift, or even during the day, we might have to shift, breakfast, lunch, or dinner by a half hour, an hour here or there, because again, it's so critical that we take advantage of the conditions that are outside and get the landing operations or the scenic cruising opportunities in as best as we can before they shift, because they can shift very quickly. So yes, of course, you'll have all of your meals included with us. And when we do get those beautiful sunny days, we will do a barbecue up on the top deck as well. Coffee, tea, and water is always available. And we do offer house wine, beer, pop, and mineral water in the restaurants at lunch and dinner. And it's not the Norwegian way of life to tip, so we pass that concept on to our ships as well. In terms of our onboard engagement, you heard me mention that we have our expedition team, our experts on board, and they will conduct a lecture series all throughout the voyage to tie into, of course, destination-specific themes to Antarctica. Because, of course, especially from our ornithologist, for example, he is in bird heaven being down in Antarctica with the number of penguins, the albatross that we might see, and the different petrels. So they will tie all of that in so you can really get sort of this overview education experience about where you're traveling. One of the things we also participate in is citizen science programs. So these are research associations that we're associated with around the world. And our guests can actually help contribute and aid to their research, because it's not always possible for them, for these associations to charter their own ship and spend an entire season in Antarctica. The cost is just too high. So they rely on companies like us who spend a full summer down in Antarctica to help them collect data. So one of my favorite things, one of my favorite associations is Happy Whale. So what happens with Happy Whale is if I, as a guest, take a photo of a whale tail, so this is their version of fingerprints like we have, we submit that whale tail to Happy Whale, and they can actually tell us just by that photograph if that whale already exists in their database. And if it does exist in their database, they can actually tell us, the previous sightings that have happened with that whale, its migratory pattern, the gender, the approximate age of the whale, if it travels with any family, and each whale has a name in the database as well. So they'll share the name of the whale. But what's even more cool is if my photo of the whale has never been seen before or documented by Happy Whale, I get to be the one to name the whale, and then the whale will forever live on in the Happy Whale database with the name that I gave it. And you can actually opt in for email whale updates even after your voyage as well. You can follow along with your whale, even into the future, which is kind of cool. It's a nice way to tie yourself to the voyage even after it's happened. We do have a professional photographer on board and each one of our expedition ships. So they help, our guests adjust their own camera and that sort of thing. We get a ton of hobbyist and professional photographers that enjoy our trips, some with lenses longer than my arm. And they're there to help you capture, especially too if we have some seabirds, sailing alongside our ship. They're great to be able to tell you how you can capture something like that. And yes, we do offer free Wi-Fi on board. This isn't for your Netflix streaming or anything like that. It's more so to keep up with social media or emails if you need. Just keeping in mind, of course, we do go to some pretty remote areas, so sometimes Wi-Fi isn't always available. And I must admit, the couple times we didn't have Wi-Fi, it was the most freeing moment of my life. I absolutely loved it. So believe me, when you're down in a place like Antarctica, you don't want to spend your time on the internet. Now, one of the other things we get to enjoy is our science boat. So you can sign up at the beginning of the cruise if you'd like to be on the science boat. It's included in the experience, and then we break you down into smaller groups so that you can go out throughout the trip. This was my science boat group on my voyage. And we were actually going out to collect phytoplankton samples and water samples so that we could take them back to the onboard science center and view them under the microscope. And even from the water samples, what can be quite eye-opening, I think, is the amount of microplastics that are floating. You know, they're very, very tiny, but they exist in pretty much all of the water samples that we collected, even in a place like Antarctica. So it's just another way for our guests to be able to be tied into what it's like to, learn about the destination. So you hear me use these terms, landings, ice cruising. What does that mean? What is it all about? So a landing is our version of going ashore. It's like if you were going to take a large ship cruise experience and you go into port and you go off and do exploring. The difference here in a place like Antarctica is there's no port, there's no city, there's no docks or anything like that. We are literally just going onto land and we explore from there. So very technical term. When we do landings, we are pulling our explorer boats up to land and then going off to see the local wildlife, the landscape, etc. So that's a version that you can see just down in the bottom photo there. And then going out to do some ice cruising. So this is where we get to take the explorer boats out and get up close and with some icebergs if we're lucky enough. And this photo captures that perfectly at the top. We might even get some wildlife encounters like those guests that you saw that had the penguin hop into their boat. So these are sort of the core elements of what make up an expedition cruise in Antarctica. And people are always curious to know, okay, well, how easy is it to be getting in and out of these boats? Because these are the boats that you need in order for the experience to unfold. And the great thing is the way the Hurtigruten ships are designed, we have a huge platform that folds out from the side of the hull of the ship and is actually water level. So we can pull our explorer boats right up. And of course, we have helping hands in the boat and from our ship to make sure that everybody is safe getting in and out. We sort of equate it like a bit like getting in and out of a bathtub for a real life comparison. And that's just another view of what the platform looks like there. So the different types of landings that we can experience here, this is actually, these are my photos, my experience. So we could have a dry landing. So this is actually Vernadsky. It's a research station, a Ukrainian research station. It's actually home to the southernmost bar in the world. So when you are there, you have to take a shot of their homemade vodka to commemorate the experience. So for this type, we can use their little piers that they have set up. So we are just stepping onto dry land in order to disembark the explorer boat. But sometimes our landing sites, we're just pulling right up to a beach area, and it does require you to step in and out of water, and polar water at that. So you can see where the boots become very handy in these types of situations. So you can see the expedition team will pretty much stand here the entire, it could be half a day, the full day, depending how long we're there doing the landing to help our guests get in and out of the boat. And again, that does involve stepping into a couple feet of polar water. And then we do also have a polar landing. So this is usually at the beginning of the season. Okay, this photo is not mine, I gotta be honest. This is at the beginning of the season, lots of snow and ice. And our expedition team actually has to go ashore first with a shovel to shovel out a set of stairs so that our guests can properly embark onto the landing area. And what's kind of funny about this area or this type of landing, especially if we're doing it near a penguin colony, is quite often after we abandon the landing site for the day, you can start to see the penguins use the set of stairs to get in and out of the water. They're quite curious and very creative in, in how they live. So how we do the landings, this is actually a copy of one of the days that was from my voyage, and we break everybody up into boat groups. So I was actually part of the Giant Petrels group, and you stay with that group the entire voyage, and this is what we use to create a seamless rotational schedule for disembarking everybody for whether it be a landing or doing our ice cruising. And you can see you can get the nice patch that you put on your jacket as well to identify what group you are a part of. So this helps to prevent you from, having to be all dressed in your warm weather gear and sitting around the ship waiting for your turn. This will give you a time frame for when your group is due to go out. And so you only have to worry about, kind of 10, 15 minutes prior to be ready to go for your group. So everybody throughout the entire voyage will get equal opportunity to have been out first as the group, and out last as the group, and out somewhere in the middle, so that it is just even Steven throughout all of our guests on board. Now, before guests actually go ashore, our expedition team will go ashore first, and you can see all of the gear that's involved in setting up a landing site. So this particular landing site was Yankee Harbor, and this was the site of many Gen 2 penguins. Now, we, as guests being ashore, of course, we want to make sure that we're not disturbing any nature, disturbing anything like that, any nesting or any mating or anything that's going on. So that's why our expedition team goes ashore first. They'll actually bring flags and different kind of highlighting items that they can stick into the ground. They can put them together like that as an X to make sure that we as guests know that that's an area we can't go to. It could be maybe there's some flora on the ground that's growing through the rocks. We don't want to be stepping on it. So these are the types of things they'll kind of block off areas where it's safe for us to go as guests while we are ashore. And you can see there's tons of other gear there as well. So because we aren't near any cities or towns or ports or anything like that, they actually bring polar survival gear ashore with every landing that we do. So we have camping equipment, we have fresh water, we have food rations, everything possible that you might need to survive for a few hours, a few days, just in the inevitable if for some reason we're not able to get back to our ship. Thankfully, it's only happened to us once, and it happened for a period of 9 hours, and it only happened to our expedition team of all people. So they had actually gone ashore to set up the landing site, and wouldn't you believe that all of these tiny little icebergs actually floated in and blocked their explorer boats. So it was basically ship, icebergs, explorer boats, and they couldn't get in the explorer boats to get back to our ship in order to collect our guests for the landing site. So they had to literally stay ashore, and it took 9 hours for all of those little icebergs to disperse in order for them to get back into the explorer boats and come back to the ship. But this is exactly the types of situations we are prepared for, because you just never know when you are in a place like Antarctica. You become very aware that Mother Nature is 100% control in this destination. So one of the other beauty things we get to do is getting into our explorer boats and going ice cruising. And again, this is one of my photos. I'm so proud of it. We were in Port Charcot and had amazing icebergs around us. So we got into our boats and we were able to go in and around all of these different icebergs. And sometimes you just forget to take photos because just what you're seeing is just so incredible. It's so amazing. You want to be experiencing it with your own eyes instead of a camera lens. So this is another great opportunity. And this is part of the expedition experience. It's not always being about on land. This adds so much to the enjoyment of being in Antarctica as well. And yes, I wasn't so lucky, but some of our guests were, that they did have an opportunity where some whales came to visit one of the explorer boats when we were out. So again, we'll never guarantee something like that, but it can be a pretty incredible surprise when it does happen. Now, the other types of ice cruising we experience is literally from our ship. We don't always need to be down at water level to see some incredible, incredible icebergs and landscapes. This was one of those beautiful sunny days where we did a barbecue up on the top deck. And this was just, me standing at the edge of the railing with an iceberg that close sailing by. Just a stunning experience. And you'll see a few more of these in the little video I show at the end. This was another evening where we actually came across, this is a piece of iceberg that actually broke off of the large A68A iceberg. If you've ever read up on it, it's slowly heading towards South Georgia. This iceberg, it's a tabular iceberg, which means obviously flat like a table, and you can only find tabular icebergs down in Antarctica. So we stumbled upon this one evening, and it happened to be during one of the most glorious sunsets. And this iceberg is so big, you could actually land a plane on it. And so imagine just, taking the ship. Our captain was incredible, got the ship up as close as possible as he could. And just you're close enough that you can actually see all the different striations in the ice and the beautiful blues and colors that come out of it. So yes, it's not just about ice cruising in our little explorer boats. So much of the experience is also what you can see and enjoy right from the ship as well. Some of the other fun things that we like to do to help our guests connect with their inner explorer, as we like to say, is maybe participating in the polar plunge while you're down in Antarctica. Lisa, I see you shaking your head. You're like, oh, heck no, I would never do that. So I felt I wasn't doing myself justice as representative for the company if I didn't do the polar plunge. So I'm proud to say I did it. The temperature was about 4 degrees in the air and 4 degrees in the water, Celsius. So just to give you an idea on how cold it was. And I do actually, in my video, I'll show you what that looked like. Now, you do get the certificate to prove that it happened, thank goodness, because I don't think anybody would ever believe that I had done it. And we also, on this voyage, had the opportunity to cross the Antarctic Circle. And again, we do give our guests the certificate to commemorate this, but we also send our guests through a little, I guess we call it ceremony to commemorate having crossed the Antarctic Circle, but also to bless the seas for the rest of the voyage for calm waters. So we have a little visit from King Neptune, and we have to pass a test from King Neptune. And the test involves sitting down, and he dumps polar water down your back. Like, this is ice, polar water, as cold as it gets. So again, being a representative for the company, I felt like I had to be the first one to volunteer to do it. So I was King Neptune's first sacrifice, getting the polar water dumped down my back to bless calm seas for the rest of our voyage. I know the photo is a little blurry, but as you can see, I think my face explains it all. It was very cold. So these are just nice little moments and stories and experiences that you get to have with Hurtigruten. And I just love the certificates to prove it happened, because otherwise nobody would ever believe me. So this is actually what it looked like crossing the Antarctic Circle. We actually went so far south that we hit 70 degrees latitude south. And this photo on the right, you can see our ship down there, the MS Roald Amundsen, and then you can see all the other little operators way further up. And I think this beautifully captures sort of that spirit of polar pioneering, pushing the boundaries. Our captain is delivering an amazing experience. Literally, this photo is we got to the ice edge and couldn't get any further. And that's just how far south we were able to get on this particular voyage. So again, it really just, I'll never have this experience again, because the beauty of Antarctica is it changes every time you go. And it changes even, voyage to voyage. So not even year on year, not even season on season, even voyage after voyage after voyage. Your experience changes. You go to different landing sites, you have different experiences. One of our earlier voyages last season in January timeframe, they were actually able to push the ship right into a block of ice, and we could actually disembark our guests to walk around on the ice. So again, it was a one-off thing that we were able to do last season on that particular voyage. And so for me, this is why I think now I'm absolutely hooked to Antarctica and feel like I could go back again and again, because your experiences are just something you can't believe even happened, and it will never be the same if you even return for a second time. So some of the optional things that you can do down in Antarctica is snowshoeing. Now, something like snowshoeing and camping, you do need a lot of snow in order to be able to do these activities. So these are best for the beginning of the season. So when I went at the end of February, March timeframe, we weren't able to do snowshoeing because there really wasn't enough base of snow in a lot of the landing sites that we visited. And going back to the rules of IATO, we can only have so many people doing these activities at one time to make sure we're complying. So these are optional excursions. These are kind of one of the few things that you would pay in addition to your cruise voyage, because we take you out in small groups. We can't take the whole ship out at the same time, unfortunately. We need to keep groups small. So snowshoeing, we usually take a group of 20 at a time, and we hope to offer it multiple times throughout the voyage. Kayaking, that's one thing we can do pretty much all season, and I had the opportunity to do that. Again, it's such a completely different experience kayaking down in Antarctica. No, I'm not a strong kayaker. Don't feel that you need to have worlds of experience to be able to kayak. I have kayaked twice in my life. First with Hurtigruten up in Svalbard, second with Hurtigruten down in Antarctica. And again, it was one of those things I needed to do, and I need to say that I'd done it. Just because you're in Antarctica, why not give it a try? But imagine, being up close, literally water level with these icebergs. And I'll send Lisa a couple links actually to share with you afterwards of some of our kayaking group that actually had whales come up and interact in and around the kayak. And then camping, yes, if you can believe it, there is, towards the beginning of the middle of the season, you can potentially go out camping in Antarctica. Imagine that. So the rule is we can take 30 people out at one time in double tents, and we do have a couple expedition team members that go out with the group for the night. The ship drops you off at the end, just after dinner, towards the end of the evening, and they will pick you back up before breakfast the following day. But what's kind of neat is the ship drops you off and then the ship leaves. You will not see the ship for the evening that you're there. And if you're lucky, we get to camp hopefully near a penguin colony. So you might have some interesting interactions there. But imagine just kind of camping in Antarctica, pretty incredible experience. So this is why I have to go back at the beginning of the season now, because I need to try my hand at camping. So I've taken up more than enough time, and I thank you so much for, just, I hope, getting inspired from this. I'm going to finish it off with, this is not any professional video by any means. This is my experience in Antarctica. These are all my little handy cam cell phone videos and photos that I've put together, because I think too, it's important to see what it's really like to travel to a place like this. Don't get me wrong, that video at the very beginning is stunning, but it's professionally done. And, I think there's I think there's something to be said for, here's the real experience of what you can enjoy when you're down in Antarctica.
Hello, Antarctica. March 3rd, 2020, on board the MS Crowell Robinson. A beauty of a day.
Deception Island polar plunge complete.
This is one of those days where you can't believe you're seeing what you're seeing, and video and photos don't do it justice.
So beautiful.
Sorry.
This is incredible. This is like Antarctica at its finest. Wow, what a day.
And there we go. That is Antarctica in probably too big of a nutshell, and I could go on, but it brings back so many great memories. My gosh.
Wow. Kristin, sign me up.
Can we go now? Oh, I'm dying to.
Oh my gosh, it's on my to-do list. I know where I'm only dreaming right now, with all the pauses that are happening, but it's definitely on my to-do list. And there were some questions. One question that stood out was about the time. What time zone are you in when you're in Antarctica?
That's so funny. And I'll send you an article because it depends on who you ask. Will depend on the time zone that you're in. I'll send you a cute little article to send out to people about it, because your time zone can vary and change depending if you're going by a ship time zone that's aligned with Chile or in Argentina. It can differ. And we did go through a couple clock shifts and stuff while we were down there as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I would gather that just like any other, unlike most cruise lines where they say, watch your time, you're with a guide at all times.
Oh, yes. So. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, for a landing, most of the expedition team, they are spread out amongst the landing sites. So they're kind of everywhere spread out. So yes, exactly. If you're not sure timing wise, they are there definitely to help, guide you in terms of, oh, you've got 10 minutes left, or, oh, you need to head to the boat, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. I have no idea what I've done here, but I've somehow shared my screen. I'm sorry to bore everyone with what I have on my desktop. But if anyone else has any other questions and they've not been answered during this presentation, feel free to reach out to me, and I will, of course, reach out to Kristin if I cannot personally answer them myself. And I'm sure Kristin would be more than happy to answer them for you.
Sure, definitely.
Okay, what a spectacular adventure.
It's still very near and dear to my heart, and I'm already dreaming of the time that I get to go back again and enjoy it. It has touched me that much that I wouldn't hesitate to go back and do it again in a heartbeat.
Okay, well, you know, I'll go with you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
We'll make a group of it. It'll be awesome.
Perfect. I'll put a group together. All right. So
Sounds
once
good.
again, I want to thank you so very, very much, Kristin, for joining me this week. This was absolutely fascinating. Expedition cruising is not like anything else you will experience. It is one adventure after the other. And I want to thank you for taking time out on your day. And I want to thank everyone else that was able to join in today. Thank you so much for joining in on our this week's travel chat. So with that, I'll say bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you again, Kristin. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. And everyone else, thank you so much for spending your day with me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.